Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir un verano en Nueva York.
Nueva
Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor,
¿Pero qué es?
solo tienes que vivir
Y este frío.
un verano en Nueva York.
Un ratito nada más. Ey, ey, ey. 4 de julio, Verde y Ulay. Ando con mi prima borracha Rulay. Los míos en el Bronx, saben la que hay. Con la nota en hoy, por Washington hoy. Willy Colón me dicen el malo. Ey, porque pasan los años y sigo dando palos. Vendiendo discos como cuadro Frida Kahlo. El perico es blanco, sí, sí, el tusi rosita. No te confundas, no, no, mejor evita. Ey, un chat de cañita en casa de Toñita. Y PR se siente cerquita, sí, sí, sí. En el campeonato nadie me lo quita.
De veces me voy, no me voy, de veces me voy, ¿ok? Puerto Rico.
Como Bad Bunny va a ser rey del pop, ey, con reggaeton y dembow, ey, con reggaeton y dembow, sí, con reggaeton y dembow. Como Bad Bunny va a ser rey del pop, ey, con reggaeton y dembow. Me siento como el lápiz en top del dough. Cuando yo nací fue que nació el flow, de low a low. Ping pong, flow pesado, Big Pong, con silenciador le robamos las gatas. J-Bone, ey, yo estoy en la mía, no tengo adversario, no. Con los Yankees los me aguanzato, a correr que otra vez la sacamos al estadio.
Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir
Ya mismo nos vamos.
un verano en Nueva York.
Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado. Tú tienes piquete, mami, yo también. Tú estás buena, yo estoy bueno también. Huelo rico y ando con los de 100. Si tú lo quieres, lo tienes que mover. Tú tienes piquete, mami, yo también. Tú estás buena, yo estoy bueno también. Huelo rico y ando con los de 100. Si tú lo quieres, lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Ba, 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 ba. Lo tienes que mover. Ba, 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 ba. Lo tienes que mover. Ba, 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 ba. Lo tienes que mover. Ba, 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 ba.
What up?
What up? How are you?
Well, I'm doing great, bro. How are you?
Good, good, man. Did you miss me last week or what?
Hey, bro. Missed you, bro. I feel like I haven't talked to you in like a little bit. How you doing? You doing all right?
Yeah, everything's good.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. So we were on a call this week, role playing, and that really seems to be, truthfully, Jose, what people really want to hear more of. I mean, I can see it in the metrics in terms of videos and the ones that get the most views, which is an indication that that's where people are seeing a lot of value, is really the tactical,
Information.
specialized knowledge of specifically what to say and how to say it to put deals together. So we were on a call, and somebody on that role play thing that we do, somebody brought me and you a question about presenting offers. And she had had a situation, I guess, where the offer came in initially. Seller just flat out said no. Offer came in less, same buyer, right? They put something together, then they were coming back asking for an inspection. And me and you proceeded to kind of break down the 3 separate kind of gathering information. So that way you're fully equipped to handle that negotiation, which is just really bringing 2 parties together, and how there's not just like an emotional component, but also a practical component, right? So I think what would be helpful is maybe we can paint that scenario, and then we can go into those 3 different categories, one being the seller and their motivation and what they're looking to accomplish and why, and what the benefit is to selling and what their feelings are, because that's really what we want to get to, because we think that we're thinking beings that feel when we're really feeling beings that think. The second kind of component of the negotiation is the buyer, right? And where they're at in the dynamic. And also contractually, what's going on, contractually, and where they are in the process. And then the third component that I want to gather data and information on is, procedurally, right? As we kind of shift through and we're looking at this big picture, because I know you like to talk about, which is, I think, is a really good analogy, these pictures of the puzzle. You need pieces of the puzzle in order to put the puzzle together. So one is the motivation of the seller. Two is what's going on the buy side. And what was the third one? I forgot what it was as I'm talking to you.
So I think the most important thing that I want the viewer to understand is we're going to teach you how to what our processes are for negotiating, and we can talk about it from a context of how to negotiate an offer when you receive an offer on one of your listings, and then how to negotiate requests for repairs.
Yeah.
I have a very specific process that I follow almost every single time, and if it's cool with y'all, I think that this is important because I think it'll teach you like very tactical things like, okay, what do? I receive an offer on my listing, or I receive an offer that's substantially lower than what I have the property listed for. Do I just
Yeah.
go
And
to
how
the
do you have
seller?
that exactly? And how do you have that conversation with the seller? And how do you help them figure out, kind of look at it as logically and practically as possible, giving them scenarios, but then also what we were demonstrating in that role play is how to create leverage.
Yeah.
And really information is what allows you to get that leverage. So, but there were three components. So I know there was what's
So
going on with the seller, what's going on the buy side. Oh, and then also like what's going on with the buyer, and then contractually, where are we in
yeah.
terms contractually as far as dates and
Which
you know
actually gives you leverage depending on where you're at contractually, or it takes away leverage depending
correct.
on where you're at contractually as well,
That's
too.
right. And then what came to the surface as well was, people usually in the course of negotiating between the agents, there's usually like this emotional arbitrage that happens. Well, they'll try to drop like these little like doubt bombs, and because most agents, are kind of doing kind of living deal to deal sort of thing, that
Freak somebody out.
emotion clouds logic. It actually causes you to be attached versus unattached, and you really need to be unattached in order to serve people at the highest level. So let's jump into that.
Well, it's interesting. I'm reading this book by this camp guy. I can't remember his name, and it's the guy that taught the hostage negotiator how to negotiate. His last name is Camp, and he
Okay.
talks about like the first thing in negotiating is not having a neediness factor.
Yeah. Which is
Yeah.
our way of saying, we say it like don't be attached to the outcome, but it's the same
Yeah,
thing.
same thing. Neediness,
Yeah.
basically.
So the scenario was she presented, she said, hey, here's a deal. We're listed at 2.8. We got an offer at 2.5 initially. They said no. They came back. We settled at 2.35. Now they did an inspection. They're asking for $50,000.
Well, let's go from this context. So, like, let's say let's start it from like just to make it more broad versus that specific scenario. You receive an offer on your listing. What is the first step that you take, basically?
Yeah. So I guess for me, and again, we're talking about this from a listing agent kind of
Perspective, yeah.
perspective, is I want to know very, very clearly the seller's motivation. Motivation stands for, like, if you break that word down, it's motive to take action. It's like a reason for doing something. And I need to be really, really clear on that, right? Because with a lack of clarity, it's ultimately going to end up impeding your ability to have that conversation with them in a way that causes them to take action, right? So it's not uncommon, and I know you know this. I'll have agents come to me and they'll get offers and maybe ask me a question. I'm like, well, why are they selling? They're like, well, they want to move. I'm like, why? And they don't even know. Like, they literally don't know. They're like, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, that's wild to me. Like, I need to know. So, and again, this happens you set this up by doing very thorough pre-qual. I'm doing a lunch and learn on Monday, specifically on the pre-qual and clearing the room by room. But questions around like motivation would be, hey, if you could refresh my memory, your home's lovely. It's in a great geographic area. I know you said you wanted to move till blank, right? And just so I'm clear, how would your life improve if and when you guys did make that move? What is the benefit to you personally in moving? Is it an option for you to not sell that home and still move? What would happen on the outside chance if we were still sitting here 6 months from now and it wasn't sold? Like, I need to be very, very clear on the reasons why and what their motivation is, because that helps me get to feelings. It helps me get to emotion, right? So we're not thinking beings that feel, we're feeling beings that think. And we think that the only reason somebody's going to do something is based on terms and conditions. Me and you have done this enough. I think 1,000 homes for you, 2,000 homes for me. That is not the main reason why people make decisions all the time.
No.
Right. So for me personally, I'm like, okay, what's their motivation? Then what I would have Carla do is she would put the highlights in the purchase sales agreement. So she's going to pull out the price, obviously, down payment, type of financing, inspection period, terms and conditions. Those are the main part. Remember, like, we're not attorneys. We just fill in the blanks of these agreements that are provided for us. So those are the main things that they want to discuss. And then I would also then have a conversation with 2 other individuals. The first one is the buyer's agent.
Yeah.
I want to talk to them. Hey, really excited that we got an offer. Look forward to working with you. And I'm curious. I just had a couple quick questions for you, because I know our job is to put this together. It's not to keep it apart. So my intention asking isn't to be nosy. The more you're willing to share, the better equipped I am to, work together as a team so we can make this happen. So tell me a little bit about your buyer. Like, have you been shopping with them for a while? And just be quiet. I'm curious, have you guys made any other offers on properties? Quiet. If for some reason, let's say they're like, yeah, we did. Oh, and if you don't mind me asking, what happened? Well, we did an inspection. We couldn't come to a meeting of the minds. I see. And then I'm wondering, what is it about this one that causes them to, write an offer here versus something else? I know they have others to choose from. Hey, and have you spoke to the lender? Like, do you have any relationship with them? Like, I'm just going to dig and dig and dig. I want to know as much as I can about their motivation, why they like the property and that sort of thing. And then I'm going to have another conversation with the lender personally to make sure they verified income, assets, credit, like, like they did all their due diligence. So I know how likely this is that we'll be able to proceed, because I'm sure, like you, Jose, at the beginning of my career, I wouldn't do these things. I would get excited and then go to the seller and be like, yeah, we should proceed. And then it falls apart. And then you look like an idiot.
So even what I would say is the first thing that I do whenever I receive an offer is I analyze the situation. So when I say almost like I have a friend who's a cop, and whenever he walks into a room, he'll scope out the room. He'll be
Yep.
like, all right, like, where are the exits? Where are people sitting? Like, if something were to happen here, where do I exit? Blah, 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 blah. Very first thing that I do. So the first questions that I'll ask to my admin are, hey, are there any talks of any other offers that are coming in? Because if there's talks of other offers, I may not even want to reach out to the buyer's agent yet, because if I do, I'm just going to put myself in a situation where now they're calling me all the time. And basically, there could be 3 or 4 offers, and that might not end up to be the best offer. So very first thing that I always do is I'll check a spreadsheet that we have. I'll be like, hey, have we followed up on every single showing that we've had? What is the feedback that we're receiving? And are there talks of any other offers? If there isn't talks of any other offers, then at that point, I'll reach out to the other agent and I'll have a conversation. If there's talks of another offer, I'll try to find out when those offers are coming in, and when those offers are coming in, because it might be in our best interest to kind of hold off on responding for like another 2 hours or 3 hours or for the remaining of the day to see if a second offer ends up coming in. The other thing when I say analyze the situation is I'll look at the offer and I'll be like, hey, look, how good of an offer is it? And it'll kind of determine which direction or what my next actions are going to be. Like, let's say we're listed at 750 and that offers at 825. I'll be like, hey, like, is it likely that if we keep it on the market or if we wait for the other offers to come in, is it likely that we're going to beat that 825? Or is this like a smoking good offer that, hey, look, we need to respond ASAP because they have a expiration of their offer on the table? So very first step, I would say, is just before you even call anybody, is just like scope out the room and be like, okay, where do we stand on this? How good of an offer is? Are there talks of any offers? What's the feedback? Should we wait a day to respond back to this offer? What should we do? Basically.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of writing stuff down as we're talking. So, well, then the first thing in our process, because what I'm aware of is, when you have a lot of listings, it's not uncommon to you to be getting offers all the time, and buyers agents, they transfer their anxiousness
To
because
you.
the buyer's giving them a lot of static and anxiousness. So they transfer it to you, and there's this like really high level of urgency to the point of like franticness. And then it also ends up being people assume two things. I think technology has caused us to want like immediate feedback, and people treat this as though this is like a transaction where I could push a button with Amazon, when it's not. There's like humans involved.
Yeah.
So what I'm aware of is, because we've been trained that way and because of that anxiousness, it creates a dynamic where if people I think they have buyer's agents have an unrealistic expectation in terms of like time. And then what that leads to is them assuming that you're doing something wrong. Like you're doing something nefarious, like you're shopping the offer, like that sort of thing. So what we would do procedurally, as soon as we get the offer, we immediately send them an email saying it was received.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, we received the offer. And what it would say in the email, Aaron's going to review it. He'll review it with the owner. As soon as we get a response, we'll get back to you immediately.
We'll get back to
His goal and objective will be to present, shortly. And they're like, okay.
And that's great to acknowledge receipt of it, because if not, it leads to anxiousness for them,
Oh, massive anxiousness. And then what happens is it quickly deteriorates, because it goes from, again, the buyers are very anxious. They transfer that anxiousness to the buyer's agent. And then what happens is everybody starts, if people are left to their own devices, they'll usually think of the most negative like intention. So they start to think like, oh, you're doing something wrong, or you're cheating the system, or you're not presenting my offer, and like all this. And it devolves very quickly. So immediately we received it. Got it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got it. And then what you're saying, it's really like, because truth is truth. We're just articulating it in different ways. So like, it's like,
So I think Aaron got cut off, so I'm going to continue going. I can't hear him. I don't know if you guys can hear him, but or maybe that was me. No, I don't think that was me. One sec, guys.
Yeah. So now that we've sent the email, we've received it. And again, what we're saying is we're saying the same things, right? Because truth is truth. We're just going about it we're just communicating it in a different way. But once we've sent the email, I got it. Now we start to analyze the situation. It's like, all right, how long have I been on the market? Have we had any other offers yet? Is there any talk of any other offers? And then I'm using, like, my staff would pull out again those key components, which is part of that assessing the situation, like assessing the offer, assessing the dynamic, like what's going on. And then after we've assessed it, then and part of that assessing, by the way, is kind of, if you think about it procedurally, like order of operations. Okay, how long have we been on the market? Do we have any other offers? Is anybody talking about making another offer? Now let's gather data on the offer. How good is the offer? Let's analyze kind of overall the seller's motivation, where we're at in the situation.
How many days on the market have we been,
Exactly. All that. And so, like, in other words, like if we've all had listings where we know as soon as that thing hits the market, we're going to have like 15, you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be out of control.
And then at that point, like, let's say that you've been on the market for 30 days and you only have 2 listings or 2 offers, then that changes the approach. If you've been on the market for 2 days and you have 15 offers, a lot of times it doesn't even make sense to talk to any of the offers yet until you counter back maybe like a highest and a best, and then you receive the highest and the best.
Yeah, and what I would
talk to the best 2 or 3 offers.
Yes, and what I would do in that situation is we would pull. Well, we can get to that. because that's like another
And then
variable.
here's what we do. Aaron calls it like taking the most important things. We have a spreadsheet that we use where my admin goes on Excel, and everything that Aaron described, it's like buyer's agent's name, buyer agent company, phone number for buyer's agent, date, buyer's names, close of escrow date, purchase price, down
Down payment,
payment, close of escrow,
financing.
type of financing, inspection, appraisal, loan contingency, pre-approval letter confirmation, proof
Desk
of
type
funds,
underwriting approval, like all those things, right?
all
So
those things are on that
and
spreadsheet. Yeah.
and the way you think about this, and I know my wife, every time I say this, she gets annoyed because she's like, Aaron, you're not a doctor. And I'm like, babe, I'm a doctor of selling. So what this is it's like getting blood work, right? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like I got all the charts, I got all the blood work. Like, what's the situation, right? So once I've assessed now, and part of that assessing, analyzing the situation is again, okay, how long have we been on the market? Have we had any other offers? Is there a high degree of probability that we're going to get more offers? If we just hit the market and we had 15 showings scheduled in the next 24 hours and we have one offer on the table, yeah, we may want to pump the brakes before, say, hey,
Responding.
exactly. But we still need to acknowledge receipt because otherwise that'll
Yeah.
get out of control. So all of that, and then I get that spreadsheet. I'm pulling out all the most important information. Now, let's say we do all of that, and it's not a situation where we're expecting multiple offers.
It's
So
only
we've
that one
been-
offer. Yeah.
So it's only that one offer. Let's say we've been on the market, I don't know, 45, 60 days. It's the only offer we've gotten. We've received 12 showings, no offers, right? So now we've assessed the whole situation and we know, again, very clearly what the seller's motivation is, like their reason for taking action, why they're doing something.
And at that point, I'm talking to the other agent beforehand.
Correct.
That's part
Yeah,
of that
and that's-
assessment. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's part of the analyzing the situation,
Yeah.
let's say, right?
And
So
but in that conversation with the other agent, depending on where the offer is in at, you can use that conversation not only to understand what they liked about it, but also to set expectations. Because like let's say the offer came in $50,000 below the asking price, and it's like that the seller would never take that. It's an opportunity for you to set expectations with that buyer's agent. And so I'll ask a question sometimes, like let's say it'll be 50K below, Aaron, and I'll be like, hey, look, like to be quite honest, like there's a model match that sold at 500,000. We're listed at 500,000. We're actually better condition. That sold less than a month ago. Like we may be too far apart. Is it even worth countering back your offer?
exactly. Yeah, and I would say something similar, like, hey, our job is to put it together. It's not to keep it apart. Like I having looked at the market analysis, which I'm sure you have as well, because I know you do a lot of business.
Yeah.
Like stroking the ego, you know what I'm saying? Flattery always works. It's like, yeah, we really price it to sell and we have comps that are there. So I appreciate and respect the fact you guys came in where you came in at. Just so I'm clear though, because our job is to put it together. It's not to keep it apart. Like, are you guys open to a counter, or is that like, where are you guys at with that? And then just be quiet and see what they say.
Yeah. And the reason I'll ask, is it even worth the counter? I get conversations from agents like, no, this is their highest and their best. I'll be like, hey, look, we might be too far apart. Is it even worth the counter? It's almost like to call out their bluff. And if I hear like something like, oh, no, please send us a counter, I know that there's wiggle room to come up.
100%.
And I'll ask them in some cases, I'll say, hey, look, like just from agent to agent, like just to try to put the deal together, like, what do you think your client would actually do on like as an offer?
Yeah.
And they might be like, well, look, I had a conversation with them. They're looking to end up somewhere around 475, 480, somewhere around there. So now at that point, I've got a lot of information going back to the owner, basically.
That's right. And you know how to have, it informs the conversation with the owner. So I would say something like, hey, our job is to put it together and not to keep it apart. And I know you're straightforward. I'm the same way too. Like me going back to the seller, like, where do you think your buyer, like, we need to be at in order to even come close to putting something together? And then just be quiet. And then they'll be like, well, I was thinking like this. You're like, okay, so now now you're clear. And now that informs the conversation with the seller.
And then let's say they say 475 and the list price is 500. At that point, I may say like, hey, look, like, to be honest, it may not even be worth countering back because we're still too far apart. The seller's expectations are at 500,000, or they're at, or they're very close to the asking price. Like, should I even counter back? And then it'll tell me like, okay, like, yeah, 475 is their tops, or no, they really want it. They might be willing to do closer to the asking price as well too. I had that data now to be able to communicate with the owner. If 475 is really the highest, now I know basically what my conversation with the owner looks like versus if I think I can get them up to closer to whatever the owner's expectations are as well.
That's right. So we've, and this isn't, again, all of this data is important as far as preliminary work prior to having the conversation with the homeowner.
Yeah.
So let's say we gathered this data and now it's time to have the conversation with them. So, and by the way, I would have this stuff up in front of me as well. So that way, you know, I'm just like completely prepared. Again, if we use that physician analogy, like they're going to be looking at the charts, they're going to be looking at the blood work, you know what I mean? And having an idea of if we were to come to sort of, you know, some conclusion, what that would look like. Now, I think the other important mental map to recognize as far as negotiating is concerned, because what I've experienced in my career is a lot of agents have the false misperception that your job is to be a hero. And what I'm aware of is like we facilitate, like our job is not to get in the way. It's to help put something together, not to keep it apart.
And I agree with that. And it's funny because in that book on negotiations, it's talking about having a mission and a purpose, meaning the goal. What is your goal as an agent? Your goal as the agent is to put the deal together. Obviously, it's to get the best possible terms. But if you're not able to put the deal together, you're not focused on the goal. That is the goal. The buyer wants to buy and the seller wants to sell. Your job is to not be like, my seller would never do that.
Yeah.
Your job is to put the deal together.
And for me not to get emotional, because like I'm not really serving anybody when I do that, and that's making it about me instead of putting a deal together. And whenever that would happen, or I would sense it happening, I would say something like, hey, you know, listen, I really appreciate where you're coming from and I appreciate your passion. What I'm aware of is neither me or you are purchasing this property or selling it, and our job is to put it together. It's not to keep it apart. So, you know, I'm all for being solution conscious versus problem conscious. So tell me, like, what do you think is a possible solution that we could potentially put something together, and then just be quiet.
And a lot of times you can even talk to the other agent and be like, hey, Aaron, look, like your goal is to put the deal together. My goal is to put the deal together. I almost feel like for whatever reason, we're not communicating in a way that allows us to accomplish the goal. I'm on your side. I want to put the deal together. So instead of like having different objectives, why don't we focus on the same thing and work together to try to put this together?
That's right. Instead of being adversarial, let's just like work together. So, all right, good. So now it's time to present to the
offer. Yeah.
Yeah. I have this data in front of me. I have the offer in front of me. I have that list with all of the important bullet points in front of me. I also have a net sheet so I can see what the proceeds would be when it all shakes out, because they're going to ask. And then what I would do is I would reach out to him and say, hey, Jose, it's Aaron. I just wanted to give you a quick call and give you some exciting news, no matter what the offer is, no matter how much it is. I want to give you some exciting news, which is that as of right now, our marketing efforts are paying off, and we actually have a written, bona fide, qualified offer on the table. I'd like to go over it with you, provide you with your options, so that way you can decide what you feel is best. And I want to be clear, Jose, whatever you decide, I'm going to support you 100%. Okay.
Okay.
So again, this is an exciting thing, no matter how much it is, right? Then I'm going to go over options and choices. We're going to review the offer. We'll go over options that you have, so that way you can make the decision that you feel is best for you and your family. Whatever you decide, I'll support you 100%. So right out of the gate, I forgot what you called it in the book that you're reading, but like I would call it like just being unattached to the outcome.
Yeah. The neediness.
Yeah. I'm like a low neediness, right? Like I'm just not attached. So whatever you decide is okay. And that's so helpful, because what I have noticed is most agents, when they go into negotiation conversations, they're highly attached.
The book is called Start With No, I believe.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And they're like, okay, it's like, yeah. So, the offer is written on an as-is contract, which means that the buyer has the right to do an inspection. They still may ask us for something, but we're not obligated to do anything. So we're kind of pre-negotiating that up front. They are putting about, $50,000 down, and they're doing, this type of financing. Just so you know, we did some due diligence. I spoke to the lender, and they verified income, assets, and credit, and already did DU underwriting approval. Are you familiar with what that means?
No.
And then I would explain it to them. Here's what that means. Da, da, da. So with a high degree of probability, we don't know these things for certain, but it doesn't seem as though this would be a reason why we weren't able to proceed. That seems to be in, good condition. They did an inspection period of 10 days, which is good. You know, the default in the contract's 21, and they're not asking for any additional terms and conditions. So they're not asking for anything, you know, kind of out of the ordinary. And ultimately, they made us an offer of $575,000. Now, notice I went over all the terms and conditions prior, and the last thing I tell them is the price. Right. And I might even pepper in there, which is like when I'm like, yeah, you know, they're doing X amount of financing, which is good. Right. Because we see offers come in with like 3% down. So just demonstrates financial strength. They did the DU underwriting approval, which is also good. They want to close at this time frame, which I know fits within the time frame that you would like to make this move happen.
Or if it doesn't fit in the time frame, I spoke with the agent and they said that they would be willing to make it a 60-day escrow.
Correct.
Or I spoke with them, that's not a deal breaker for them. They would be willing to offer you a rent back if need be. This is just where they wanted to start off with.
Yeah. So as we're going through those terms, we're kind of aligning it with them. Right. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, dude, like, so this is, you know, that's pretty good. And yeah, even though they're asking for a little bit longer closing period, I know that that's not preferable for you. So I checked with the agent. It's not going to be a deal breaker. They said that they would be okay, you know, with shortening that to like 60 days. And let's say, for instance, they did put a 21-day inspection period, which in my opinion is a little too long. So we can always come back and ask them to shrink that a little bit. Oh, the loan commitment date, you know, if the default in the contract's 31 days, they shorten that to 21, which again, we feel really good about. And there's no other additional terms and conditions. They're not asking for anything out of the ordinary. And ultimately, they made us an offer of $575,000. Now, when offers come in, Jose, we always have a few options that are at our disposal. And I'd like to review them with you again so you can decide what you feel is best. Whatever you decide, I'll support you, okay? The first option is we could accept the offer the way that it's written. Now, time out. So here's why all of that information and data gathering is so important. So let's say they're like, yeah, you know, the buyer's agent's like, there's probably like a little bit of wiggle room there, right? They told you that. Yeah, like maybe if they came back like an extra 5 or 10, like we could probably put something together. So if I know that, then what I would say there in that situation is so the first option is we could accept the offer the way that it's written. And I'm not suggesting that we do that.
100%. It's so funny. I was going to say the same.
Because of course you do, bro. We think the same, dude. Like we're in alignment, right? So, and what that does is that aligns me with them immediately. Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Or if you know that their expectations are higher and there's wiggle room on that price that they can come up, you're like, hey, first option is accept that. I'm not suggesting that we go in that direction.
Right.
Complete alignment now.
Exactly. Now we're in complete alignment. The second option is we can flat out say no, Jose. We could just send them packing. Now, if you did decide to do that, again, I would support you. I want you to be clear on a couple things, right? Because there's two things I don't know with a high degree of certainty. Number one is if and when we did receive another offer, if it would be any better. I don't know that. And number two is how long it would take us to get another offer. You see, we've been on the market now. Again, look, we've gathered all this data. We've been on the market now for 60 days. We have 15 showings. This is the first offer that we've received. So it could take another 60 days or it could take longer. I don't know either one. So that's something we got to be clear on. And I know you were kind enough to share with me. Again, look at all this data starting to come out. When we initially had the good fortune of earning your business, that the main reason you wanted to sell the home was blank and you wanted to be out there by blank time frame. Is that still the case or has that changed? No, that's still the case. Okay, so that's probably that second option really wouldn't serve us best. And the third option, now notice, right? Because they're giving me the data and it's based on everything that we've just kind of gathered, and I'm giving them their motivation and the time frame. And so it's that's telling me this wouldn't work, not me saying, hey, don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So based on what you've been kind enough to share with me, and based on the fact that you still want to sell and you want to do it in this time frame, that second option really doesn't seem like it would serve you that good. And then that leaves us with the third option. And the third option is that we could counter, Jose. Now, if you did decide, notice if creates possibility, no like hard and fast. If we did decide to counter, my suggestion would always be is that we make it a very reasonable one that they would strongly consider, if not accept. Reason being is in speaking to them, you know, they do like the home. There's a few others that they're looking at. And, you know, I wouldn't want to see them go someplace else instead of buying yours. And then be quiet.
What would you like to do?
Yeah. What would you like to do? And then be quiet. And if you do this right, what they will say to you, which they say to me and Jose all the time, well, what do you think we should do? What do you think would be reasonable? And then what you say is listen, I appreciate you asking. And just so you know, Jose, I take the responsibility very seriously, which is to protect the value of your property, get you every penny possible. And speaking to the other agent and kind of looking at the whole scenario and the situation, how long we've been on the market, how long it took to get this offer on the table, what we're seeing happening in the marketplace, you know, the most reasonable counter is to split the difference. It's come right down the middle, right? So we get you a little bit extra money. They feel like they're getting a little bit of a value. And, you know, we create a win-win proposition, and in 30 days we could be done and complete. Now, if we did that, I have a net share here in front of me. That would mean you and your family would net X amount from the sale. Would that allow you to make this sale happen? Never would that be enough, because it's never enough. And they'll be like, well, I mean, I guess so. Okay, so then do I have your permission to go ahead and make that counter? Yes. Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and do that right now. I'll give them all the reasons why we think it makes sense. And just so you know, when we counter, we start the process all over again. They have the same options that you do. They can either say yes, they could say no, or they could counter. And, you know, as soon as I get a response, I'll let you know. Okay, great. And then we take it from there.
And what I would say to, what I would add to that, whenever they ask you, what do you think you should do? A lot of that depends on what you discovered in your analyzing phase. Meaning,
Correct.
like, I had one just a couple of days ago. He's like, well, what do you think we should do? I'm like, well, look, I actually spoke with the other agent. The agent mentioned to me that they know that they started low on the price. I've already prepped them with all the comps. There's a very good likelihood that they would accept your asking price. So I would recommend countering back at asking price. Or, hey, look, like, I spoke with the other agent. They're looking to end up, I believe that they would do somewhere around $295 or $395 or whatever it is. This is where, when you collected all your information, the whole point of collecting the information is just so that you can give the seller better guidance and appropriate guidance. And in some cases, I'll go to the seller and just, and instead of the 3 options, I'll be like, hey, look, in this situation, we really only have 2 options. One of the options is either to accept, or the other option is to reject it. Because I spoke with the agent, and the agent actually told me that this was their highest and best already. What would you like to do? Like, no, like, it's not one of those situations, but it has to do with that collecting information phase. That phase is so important. And it's so interesting, Aaron, that I don't think most agents do that, to be honest.
And not only do they not do it, but to the best of my knowledge, me and you have been in this game for a long time, and we've been around different training programs.
Yeah.
I've never heard people role play this. I've never heard people, like, kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like, consistently, intentionally, and to give people like a very clear kind of process procedurally on how to do it, like how to go one step at a time. Here's where you go from here, in the same way that me and you do when it's like, I remember you made that like tree, like, hey, if they do this, do this. If they do this, do this.
Same thing.
It's the same thing. And there's a process. And then what popped into my head is, if they're like, let's say, to your point, let's say I know the property's in disrepair. It's been on the market a long time. They want to sell it. Their motivation's high. We speak to the buyer's agent, and they're like, well, this is our best, man. Like, so when I present it to the seller, I'm like, well, we have a couple options, to your point. Like, number one is we could accept it the way it's written. And truthfully, sellers that we work with that are in a similar situation with a property in disrepair, that is something that they do. And what that would mean is you guys would net this amount. Second option is we just say no. Now, if we did say no, I don't know 2 things with a high degree of certainty. Number one, how long it would take to get another offer. Could take weeks, could take months. Second is if and when we did receive another offer, if it would be any better. So based on what you're looking to accomplish, or why, the time frame you'd like to make happen, and what do you think we should do? And let's say they start to hem and haw. Well, now this whole separate skill set comes in, where it's like, all right, well, look, I'm here to help you. I'm never here to talk you into do anything. So let me ask you a couple quick questions just to make sure that I'm on the same, like, I'm very clear on what you're looking to accomplish and why. And I'm imagining perhaps it could help you to get clarity so you can make the decision that you feel is best. And again, Jose, I know I've said it once, but I want you to really hear me. Whatever you decide is okay. I'll support you. Okay. So my first question is what would happen on the outside chance if we were still sitting here? I don't know. It took us 4 months to get this offer. What would happen on the outside chance if we were still sitting here 4 months from now and it still wasn't sold? What would that mean for you and your family?
Well, it wouldn't be good.
Okay.
Meaning, yeah.
And is it an option for you to not sell this home and maybe just like pivot and do something different, like hold on to it or rent it, or, you know, like do something else with it?
It is, but I wouldn't want to go in that direction.
Okay. And tell me a little bit more about that. Like, how come you don't want to do that?
it doesn't make sense. I'm scared of California rent control, to be honest. I don't believe that I would do it. Not only that, but it's costing me money every month that the property is vacant, so like, no, it doesn't make sense for me to rent it at all.
And then just so I'm clear, approximately how much per month is it costing you to kind of
Probably
hold
like
on?
$4,000 a month.
Wow. So
Approximately.
yeah, so let's just do the math on that real quick. 4,000 for wow. So I mean, it's basically cost you $16,000 in carrying costs. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Hmm. So with that being said, being that it's not an option for you to not sell because of what you shared, and I'm in agreement with you, lots of investors are feeling the same way you are. And being that it's costing you $4,000 a month to carry, and being that we don't know how long it would take to get another offer, if and we did, if it would be any better. Gosh, I mean, does it seem like it makes sense to like just send these people away, or does it seem like we should probably seriously consider this offer?
Boom. Now, here's what I want to point out. So as you guys can see, we're walking. Can you guys see me, or am I frozen? As you guys can see, we're walking you guys through a process now.
Yep.
It's like step 1, analyze, collect all the information. Step 2, you speak with the other agent, depending on how many offers you have. If you have 10 offers, there's no need to speak to all 10 of them, because it's very likely just going to be like a highest and a best counter offer, or selecting the best offers to be able to speak with them. Step 3, you speak with your client. And then step 4, you basically speak with your client to determine how they want to respond. And then the next step is, depending on if they accept, counter, or reject, it might be digging into the seller's motivation and understanding that motivation to be able to help them make a better decision if you get pushback on the counter
right.
or on the response on that.
Yeah, and what came up for me is some people might perceive that as that, like, oh, like you're like kind of pushing the seller, and it's like, well, what I'm doing is I'm helping them to make an informed decision, based on data, and really attempting them to help to get emotion out of the conversation, because emotion clouds logic. It clouds decision making. So let's say you get an offer that's less, and you had this expectation the whole time that you were going to get more. And unfortunately, through no fault of your own or mine, the marketplace is not allowing that to happen. Well, the emotion that's going to be associated with that is you'll be angry and maybe have like a little resentment towards the market, or towards your uncle who told you not to sell it when you wanted to sell it, or like whatever. But that'll end up clouding your logic, right? It'll cloud reason. And it'll get in the way of them making a good financial decision. Another one that came up for me, like let's say they're pushing back, and it's like, yeah, it's costing you $4,000 a month. I mean, I oftentimes find, Jose, if we can think about this as just like an asset, and let's say, because I know from the sale, if you sold it, you get like $350,000 from the sale. Well, let's say you owned an asset that was paying you $350,000, or excuse me, that was worth $350,000, and instead of putting $4,000 a month in your pocket, it was actually taking $4,000 a month out of your pocket. Under normal conditions, how many months would you allow that to happen before you called whoever it is that was the custodian of that investment and told them to sell it?
So here's what I would say, like, let's go deeper into that. And I think this is one of the areas where you're like really an expert in, bro, like
Yeah.
understanding the seller's motivation. So
Yeah.
walk us through more of those examples of things that you would do to kind of like really understand what they're looking for, and to be able to help guide them to help make a better decision.
Yeah, and I think the critical component of that is, again, it's like this mental map or belief. I think there's agents that are listening to this, when they hear me or you kind of start to have this conversation with the seller, start to think to themselves like, oh, well, like you're supposed to like fight for them and help them to get every penny possible, and you're supposed to like, which, yes, that's what we're doing. But what I'm also aware of is I wrote something down as we were speaking. I heard a quote one time that was really good, and it was this money manager who managed money for like high net worth individuals.
Mhm.
And somebody asked him, what do you do? He's like, well, I actually don't manage people's money. And they said, what? He's like, yeah, I manage their emotions. Which was so insightful, because when the marketplace is going down, what does everybody do? They freak out and they sell. And when it's going up like gangbusters, they get greedy and they buy too much. Right? So he's managing emotions. So the goal, there's two components here. One is to extract emotion, right, as much as possible. have them focus on the logic, but then also kind of box them in to show them the distortion of their thinking. So, like, let's say somebody's balking because they got that offer, and it's the only one they've got, and it's cash or whatever, and they want to close quick, but it's less than what they would like. So I would say something like, listen, I understand that your initial response to this is no. And in fact, if we do end up sending them away, it's perfectly fine. Like, I'm okay with that. What I'd like to do is just kind of ask a couple quick questions, just so I'm clear and you could have clarity so you can make the decision that you feel is best. And again, whatever we come up with is perfectly okay. So I guess I'm wondering, from your perspective, if you can refresh my memory, like, why do you want to sell this home? I know you don't have to, but like, what would be the benefit to you personally? How would your life improve in some way? And they're going to start to talk to me. Well, this, and this. Now you want to keep digging. Okay, so let's say we do this, and this for you. What will that do for you? And they'll say, well, it'll be less stress and da. Okay. Now let's say we do this and we get the less stress and all that. How would that make you feel, Jose? That would just be such a relief. Okay. And at this, now, what did I get you connected with? Feelings.
Yeah.
At this stage in your life, Jose, how important is that to you? It's very important. Okay. So with that in mind, now let's look at the situation. And we have a few different data points, right? So notice the mixture of emotion. Now we're going back to logic. I've got you connected to the emotion very clearly because we're feeling beings that think, not thinking beings that feel.
Yeah.
Now we go to the emotion, which, and in my opinion, that's the correct order. Right? So we've been on the market now for 4 months. And in that time frame, we've had 25 showings and 1 offer. Now, I know my staff has been giving you updates and we've been talking about it every couple of weeks or so, and we've gotten consistent feedback from the market. What has the marketplace consistently told us, Jose?
That they don't like the busy road in the back, that basically the property needs work.
Yeah. And, we can't pick it up and put it somewhere else, right? So that's not an option. And then we've also discussed, I'm very hesitant to propose that you spend any money, Jose, unless it would be a situation where, like, if we spent $1, you would get like 2 or 3 back. And based on, the dynamics and based on what we would have to put into the property, that really doesn't seem to be a reasonable option to put capital in, because it would just be like an exchange of money. So if we put like 100 in, we would get like 110 out, maybe. So that doesn't really seem to make sense, correct?
Correct.
All right. And then tell me again, like, because again, we're here to help. We're never here to twist anybody's arm. So is it an option for you to not sell the home and maybe do something else with it?
No, it's not.
Okay. Is it an option for you to rent it?
I would prefer not to.
And tell me a little bit about that. So whenever you get an answer, dig. Tell me a little about that. Like, because what I want to get to is the emotion. So tell me a little bit about that. How come you don't want to rent it?
I just, I had a bad experience like 10 years ago.
Yeah. It's not uncommon that I hear from homeowners, because renting is like a portfolio opportunity. I'm imagining that feeling was not great with that bad experience.
Oh,
right?
No. They didn't pay for like a year, and it put us in a bad position at that time. Luckily, we were able to keep the property, but it just created a bunch of anxiousness for that period of time.
Makes sense. Notice, what do we do? So first, we're connecting with what he's going towards. The second thing is connecting what he's moving away from. Yeah. And it's like, okay, so I get that. And I understand your desire to get it sold. So we have a couple options at our disposal now. And again, whatever you decide is okay. The first option, Jose, is we can accept this offer the way that it's written. And truthfully, having heard the situation, the feedback, what our experience has been up until right now, that might make sense to do. At that amount, you would net this amount from the sale.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm imagining somebody like you, if you got that capital, and again, I'm not trying to be nosy, I'm just curious. If you did, let's say, sell the property and got that from the sale, if we accepted this offer and proceeded, what would you put that capital towards? Would you invest it in something else that produced cash? Would you pay down debt? Like, what would you do?
Well, I need to pay off some debt. So, and that's why that number won't work for me, Aaron, because it won't allow me to do everything I need to do. Meaning that, like, I've got a other house that I'm looking to pay off. I need $400,000 from the other house. I've got some credit card debt. I got a home equity line of credit. So that's like an extra 200. So that's like 600,000. Like, this is going to net me like 575, like, I'm like $25,000 short, which is why I need an extra $25,000.
Yeah, I understand. And again, I appreciate your willingness to share. The more you're willing to share, the better equipped I am to provide you with information that could be helpful or useful in some way. And when I hear the word need, I'm aware that, I need air, water, food, and shelter. Most of what we say we need, we just want. So I understand in a perfect scenario, in a perfect world, you'd sell this property and just pay everything off. At the same time, if there was a scenario that you could sell this property, pay 95% of it off, and that other 5% you'd be able to pay off in the next 6 months, would that be something that you would be open to?
Yeah, but the reality is I wouldn't be able to pay it off in the next 6 months. That's the whole point,
Yeah. Well, let's think about this together as a team. So, and refresh my memory, how much is it costing you per month to leave it empty?
4,000.
Okay. And you have been obviously coming up with the funds to do that for the last 4 months, right?
Correct. Yeah.
All right. So if we sold this property, that 4,000 a month, would be yours, correct?
Correct.
All right. So if we multiply that by 6, do you know what that equals, Jose?
24,000.
That's right. So I understand, like, when we have an initial idea in our mind of the way it's going to look, that sometimes, that can cause us to resist another option or solution. What I'm interested in is really what your end goal is. I'm less concerned with how we get there. I'm more concerned that we get there. So I guess the question for you is which one has more value for you? Kind of getting this home sold, getting it done and complete, or having it weigh on you and us sit here for, because I don't know how long it would take to get another offer that's acceptable. Because if we wait another 4 months, you're going to spend another 16 grand anyway, just carrying it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
All right. So, like, what do you think we should do then?
Boom. Here's another thing that I wanted to kind of go over with people. Sometimes I feel like, especially newer agents, they have trouble presenting offers that are asking for some sort of credit.
Yeah.
As well too. Like, let's say you're listed at 700,000 and somebody asks for 700 minus like a $10,000 credit. So a lot of the times sellers have a negative connotation when people ask for credits. They're like, well, why would I give them $10,000? Why would I pay for $10,000 of their closing costs? And it's almost like you have to reframe it in order to be able to put the deal together. So even when I'm presenting an offer, I'll say, look, they're offering you $690 on the property. I'll be like, the way that they structured it is they structured it in a way where it's an offer of 700,000 with a $10,000 closing cost credit. However, because they're asking for the closing cost credit, I'm not looking at it as a $700,000 offer. I'm really looking at it as an offer of $690,000. Now that we have the offer, we have the following 3 options: accept, reject, or counter. Now you can get creative with this. So like sometimes when I'm in the discovery phase, I'll ask the buyer's agents, I'll be like, hey, look, is this one of those situations where the buyer wants the credit or needs the credit? And they'll be like, well, they need the credit. I'm like, well, look, the seller's actually stuck on their $700,000 net. What if we structured it in a way where it's like, we offer 710, but we gave you guys a $10,000 credit? And they'll be like, well, why would they offer you 710? It'll be like, well, look, you're really not offering me 710. You're really not offering the seller 710. You're really offering them 700 because you're asking for the $10,000 credit. It's a net offer of $700,000. So there's different ways of structuring deals. And I find that a lot of times the newer agents run into issues with presenting offers that are asking some sort of credit.
Because of precisely what you just said, which is framing.
Yeah, framing. Exactly.
Right. So, and that made me think, like, I would do the same thing when I'd be like, yeah, we had the offer came in, like, go over all the terms or whatever. They offered us, they are asking for a $10,000 concession. Right. And they made us an offer of a purchase and sales price of 700. So really this is a net offer of 690.
Yeah.
Now, whenever we have offers come in, we have 3 options at our disposal. First is we can say yes and just proceed. Second is we could say no. Now, if I know in the back of my mind that they were thinking like 690 anyway, I could be like, we could say yes and just proceed. Second option is we could say no, send them away. Again, we need to be clear on, I don't know how long it would take to end their offer. If we do any better. The third is that we could counter. If we did decide to counter, my suggestion is we make it a reasonable one that they would strongly consider, if not accept. The reason being is I know they have other homes to choose from, and I wouldn't want to see them go someplace else instead of buying yours. So based on what you're looking to accomplish your why, based on what you value most and what's important to you and the time frame you'd like to make this happen in, what do you think we should do? And then be quiet. And then based on that, we can navigate.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've had sellers that are like, "No, I'm not offering any sort of closing costs credit." I'll be like, "Well, let me ask you this. Like, let's say that they weren't asking for closing costs, but instead of offering you 700 with 10 back, they just offered you 690.
Yeah.
How would you respond to that?" I'd be like, "Well, I'd take it." And it's like, well, like it's
the framing thing. The frame causes them to not understand because it makes them, because if they're asking for something, they feel like they're losing.
Yeah. So it'd be like, well, can I be fully transparent with you? Like, yeah, it's actually the same exact thing. It's just being structured differently. So they're actually offering you the net price of 690. They're just structuring it in a way. Now, whenever we receive these types of offers, I always ask, hey, does the buyer want the credit or do they need the credit?
Yes.
This is one of those situations where they need it, meaning that if we don't structure it in a way where we give them the credit, unfortunately, we won't be able to put the deal together.
Yeah. And what I would do is remember we were talking about in the gather the information stage when I'm speaking to the buyer's agent, if there is a credit there, I would ask them, hey, just so I'm clear, because our job is to put it together, it's not to keep it apart. I know they asked for a concession. Is that something that they actually need, or is it just something they're asking for? And then you just be quiet. And more often than not, they will tell you. They'll be like, well, yeah, they just are asking. Like, okay. So that way, or if they're like, no, they really needed to proceed. So when I'm presenting, I say, yeah, it's a $10,000 concession. And, I checked with the buyer's agent and the lender. And in this instance, they actually need that in order to proceed, in order to get the financing. And they did offer us 700. So it's a net offer to you of 690. And what that means when it all shakes out, and I'm clear that is an if we were to proceed, you guys would net X amount from the sale. So whenever we have offers come in and then we go down that path, we have 3 options.
And then even when I'm talking to the other agent, I may say something like, well, look, what do you think is a better structure? Because my seller, if like, let's say I know my seller's stuck on the 700,000, which is asking price. And let's say that I know that buyer is willing to come up. I may ask him like, what do you think would be a better structure? Like you wrote at 690 or 700 with 10 back. Do you think a better structure for your buyer would be the 700,000 with no closing costs credit? Or do you think a better structure would be the 710 with 10 back? And then if they need it, they might say, well, the better structure would be 710 with 10 back. Okay. And do you believe that you'd be able to get that done? Yes, I would. Okay, great. Now I know what structure to propose to our client. And a lot of times what I realize is that when you go to the client better prepared, like this, where you're having the conversations with the agent, you're able to be more efficient and you're able to have better conversations with the seller by doing some of the homework up front.
Yeah. And this is interesting because somebody said something, and I think it's important. Like, remember how we talked about before, and you made this kind of statement based on an awareness, and I believe that it's true, is that a lot of agents, I think they buy into buyers and sellers' beliefs because they believe them too.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody just said, he was like, yeah, I understand. So Jose was like, yeah, when people are not in a rush, why are all the best brands in the quickly, aka Apple and Tesla and Air Jordans, and the brands that sit on the shelf get discontinued, aka Ross, whatever. So it's interesting, right? So if I harbor that belief, but then when I hear that, I'm like, well, I see what you're saying, Jose, like, fine. But I also have a different belief, which is that humans really value novelty, something that's new. They also value selection. So what's on the rack at Marshall's and Ross, yeah, it might have the brand on it, but it's usually not the best selection. It's usually not the best fitting. It's usually not, you know what I'm saying? I got to wait in line at Ross with a bunch of interesting people for an hour just to check out. So that means I don't value time. You see what I'm saying? So I think you got to be mindful of that. Like, if you're interjecting your own distortions of what's true or your own beliefs into like that, you're going to get yourself in trouble doing that.
Here's what I'm learning as well too from the book. And we've talked about this before, that human being, like, in order to know how to negotiate, you have to understand human psychology
Oh, you can't do it without it.
and human behavior. And if you understand human psychology and human behavior, it allows you to be able to almost predict certain outcomes before they actually happen, and it allows you to actually navigate through these different things. So in order to be good negotiators, just understanding human psychology, understanding human behavior, understanding like certain flaws in thinking, and help guide people how to get what they want. And sometimes it has to do with reframing the way that they
Reframe it.
think
Yeah, and
to get them what
challenging
they
some,
want.
yeah, and to your point, Jose, sometimes it's thoughtfully and gracefully challenging a belief that they have.
Yeah.
So, let's say somebody shuts it down. Nope, not taking it. Okay, that's cool. And whatever you decide is perfectly okay. We have those 3 options at our disposal. It sounds like you want to choose just to send them away. And I'm imagining, just so I'm clear, I'm imagining that the only reason it would make sense for us to send them away is because we're just kind of hoping that we'll get another offer and it'll be better. Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's look at that together as a team, because if that makes sense, then great, we'll do it. If for some reason we're seeing data that's conflicting that, then we may need to rethink the strategy. So right now on the market, there are 20 properties in your price point within 2 miles of where your home is. And I know you're aware of that because we sent you that information, right?
Yeah.
Do you know how many of those have sold in the last 60 days?
No.
3. So I guess I'm curious, does that seem like an environment, Jose, where like stuff's selling like gangbusters and prices are going up dramatically? Or does it seem like one that has shifted actually where buyers have more leverage because there's just more supply?
Yeah.
Yeah. And with that being the case, I guess I'm wondering, what's the probability or likelihood that, if we do send them away, which is okay, if we do decide to do that, somebody will come along and pay us $50,000 to $100,000 more just because we want them to?
Yeah, probably slim.
Yeah. And again, my intention in sharing this with you is not about me being right. Instead, it's about you and your family and your guys' desire to get this home sold. Because can I share with you what really concerns me for you and your family?
What?
It's not uncommon that when offers come in, if they come in and it's not in alignment with expectations, people just flat out say no. At the same time, when do you think the highest level of interest we have on this property is? When we first put it on the market, or when it's been on the market for 120, 180 days?
100 now. Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you think happens with offers and the amounts as time progresses?
Probably goes down.
Exactly. So just by you saying that demonstrates that perhaps it makes sense to at least counter, right? To see what shakes out, because we never know what's going to shake out. Now, why am I suggesting that? Number one, because whatever they counter at, now I know for the next offer where they're at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's say they're like, yeah, let's counter it like, let's say it's 600 and
or it could set you up for a price reduction as well.
Yes, too. Exactly. A, when the next offer comes in, B, the price reduction, and C, who knows? Maybe you get close and you put something together.
Yeah. And then all it comes down to is trying to bridge a gap as well, too, like some human behavior things that I've seen is that people will walk away from a deal sometimes for $5,000 or $10,000 because of emotion. And in some cases, when they're like $5,000 or $10,000 off, they may throw in the towel and be like, I don't want to sell anymore. And then list it 3 months later with a different agent because they think that you didn't do a good job. So if I'm that close, I am doing everything I can to try to bridge that gap, to try to bridge that gap. And in some cases, I've had to be like, hey, I'm pitching into 2,500. Other agents pitching in $2,500, sellers pitching in $2,500, buyers pitching in $2,500. Boom, we get the deal done.
Yeah, just move on.
And move on, because a lot of it has to do with just understanding like what is probably going to happen. And there's been cases where I'm just like, dude, if this doesn't go into escrow, or if we're not able to keep this together, it's basically like, so would I rather make $10,000 and get it closed out, or would I rather make $0 having already completed 80% of the work already?
And I want all agents to be clear who are going to listen, who are listening to this now or watch, once it's posted. Me and Jose are not suggesting that's the rule.
No.
That is the exception. We've gone down every route. We've talked to each party, because what we've had happen is where they want a certain amount, and my transaction coordinator would go to the buyer's agent first to get it before they come to me, and I'm the last.
Yeah, it's always like
the
that.
seller. I've spoken to everybody. Now it's another assessment.
Well,
Now it's another like looking at the whole picture. Okay, what's the situation with the seller? How difficult are they? What's the probability we'll get another offer? What's the probability we could get it to this place? How long do we have left in the listing group? Like all of that, then I make a decision.
100%.
An executive decision.
An executive decision, yeah. And then in some cases, I've had to do what I need to do to get it closed out, you know. And and I'm so glad that I have, because remember, it's all about like, okay, what's the goal? The goal, there's a gap. The goal is to bridge that gap to basically get the deal done. The mission and the purpose is, how can we get this deal done? And for those of you guys that don't know this, $10,000 is better than $0. I promise you that, 7 days of the week, every day, you know, like $10,000 is way better than $0. So, all right, guys, I hope that this episode was helpful. I know that this is a topic that we haven't covered in the past. We're going to continue covering different tactical information and to help you guys learn different processes, systems, how to have different conversations to help you guys become better agents, do more deals, and produce more.
That's what we do, team. Hey, Jose, if you got more questions about this, the other Jose who just asked, hit me up on Instagram and on Instagram. All right, team, let's go. Let's grow. Talk soon.
Peace out.
Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir un verano en Nueva York. Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir un verano en Nueva York.
Un ratito nada más. Ey, ey, ey. 4 de julio, baila Yulai. Ando con mi prima borracha Rulay. Los míos en el Bronx, saben la que hay. Con la nota en hoy, por Washington hoy. Willy Colón me dicen el malo. Ey, porque pasan los años y sigo dando palos. Vendiendo discos como cuadro Frida Kahlo. El perico es blanco, sí, el tusi rosita. No te confundas, no, mejor evita. Ey, un chat de cañita en casa de Toñita. Y PR se siente cerquita, sí. Con el campeonato nadie me lo quita.
Cerveza nuevo, number one de Cerveza nuevo, ¿ok? Puerto Rico.
Como Bad Bunny va a ser rey del pop. Ey, con reggaetón y dembow. Ey, con reggaetón y dembow, sí. Con reggaetón y dembow. Como Bad Bunny va a ser rey del pop. Ey, con reggaetón y dembow. Me siento como el lápiz en Cape del Dow. Cuando yo nací fue que nació el flow de lado a lado. Ping pong, flow pesado. Big Pong, con silenciador le robamos las gatas. J-Bone, ey. Yo estoy en la mía, no tengo adversario. No, con los Yankees los me aguanzato. A correr que otra vez la sacamos al estadio.
Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir
Ya mismo nos vamos.
un verano en Nueva York.
Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado. Tú tienes piquete, mami, yo también. Tú estás buena, yo estoy bueno también. Huelo rico y ando con los de 100. Si tú lo quieres, lo tienes que mover. Tú tienes piquete, mami, yo también. Tú estás buena, yo estoy bueno también. Huelo rico y ando con los de 100. Si tú lo quieres, lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover.